Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have an 8-game NBA slate, and then we have a 11-game college basketball slate. So let's go ahead and get started on this. We're gonna start with the NBA today. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? All right, so for the NBA, we have a lot of injuries as usual. For Boston, Brown is out. Porzingis is out. That helps Cornette and Horford. For the Warriors, Curry is doubtful. Melton is out. Podziemski and Wiggins would get boosts there. For Memphis, Bain, Smart are both out, and Conchar is questionable. Morant and Wells get boosts. For Utah, Markkanen is questionable. Clarkson and Hendricks are out. Filipowski would likely start again if Markkanen gets ruled out, and Sexton gets a boost. For Washington, Kuzma is out, which gives Poole a boost. For Milwaukee, Giannis is actually questionable today. Middleton is out. Obviously, Portis would get a huge boost if Giannis was to miss, as would the starters. For Chicago, Levine is questionable. For Brooklyn, Simmons is out, and Claxton is questionable. If Claxton gets ruled out, Clowney would get a big boost. For Atlanta, Hunter is doubtful, and Bogdanovich is out. Richard gets a boost there. For the Lakers, Russell is questionable. If he was out, Reeves and LeBron would get boosts. For Sacramento, Huter is questionable. If he's out, Monk would get a boost. For Cleveland, Levert is questionable, and Struss is out. And then for Detroit, Thompson is out. So lots of injuries, but not a whole lot that's going to make or break this slate, really. The big things there for Boston, Brown being out gives Cornette a huge boost. And then we have some other guys that are questionable, like Curry, Markkanen, Giannis, and Levine. They could definitely play a role on the slate. But we do have some guys we do like today. So let's start with our point guards. We'll start with Carrington for Washington. He's been pretty solid. He's going to get a ton of minutes as per right now with the injuries here, and I look for him to be a solid option against a pretty tough defense. But I think that he's going to have a lot of upside. And even at that, his price point is still too low for his production potential with the total minutes he's getting right now. Even against Miami, he managed 29 fantasy points, and that's one of the toughest defensive team slowdown games that you can have. So I look for him to have a really solid opportunity here with those minutes that should give him some utility. Though he definitely is a little bit contrarian per traditional standards. Looking at Peyton Pritchard, Pritchard should get more run as a result of Brown being out. I think all the starters here get a lot of boosts here. In the last game, he didn't, with Brown out, he got more run and he got over 30 fantasy points. He was even doing that with Brown. So I think he's in a very good spot today, and he's definitely a guy that I think has a lot of potential to be a great play on the slate. Derek White is also going to get a nice boost again. His price is rising, but back up a little bit. But I do think he's going to be an interesting play on the slate. He definitely has that scoring potential to pay off here. He's probably a little pricier than I'd like, but the matchup here is just absolutely solid. So I think he's in a good spot as well. Cade Cunningham is a good price a guy you could pay up for a little bit. He has had some ups and downs, but he's definitely capable against a against a very weak defense. And then Jalen Brunson also looks solid for Knicks today against Houston. He might just be a little bit underpriced for his potential today, though he does have that low floor. He has a high ceiling, and it looks like he's finally starting to get going, so he's definitely worth a look here. Looking at shooting guards, Carrington, Pritchard, and White all play here as well. But Hero looks very solid for Miami. He has been up and down so far this season, but he has a high ceiling, and his floor is pretty good for this game. And so I do like him as a kind of a contrarian play. Bilal Calabi is also interesting for Washington. Despite the tough matchup, he's been playing pretty well, and with the injuries to Kuzma and stuff, his usage will go up. Looking at our small forwards, we do like Keyshawn George here for Washington. Now he's a cheap play, but he's going to have more run with Kuzma out, and that gives him a very good opportunity here to continue to have solid games. He's averaged 24 or 25 fantasy points the last two games. I think that trend should continue here. Josh Hart for the Knicks is a really good play. He's been pretty good most of the season so far, and he has a high ceiling. He's going to be one of the top two scorers for the team behind Towns, likely most of the time. So I think he's in a great spot right now. Jason Tatum for Boston also looking solid today with Brown out, he should get more uh, damage here. Now, the last game against Charlotte, he only scored 40 fantasy points, but I think he'll bounce back and have a big monster game here. So I look for him to be a great play on the slate. Carlaby also can play here. And then Hauser, he could get some utility here. Now, he is probable, I think, at this point. But if he was to play, then he would definitely get some more run on the slate, and he's cheap. Looking at the power forwards today, Josh Hart can also play at this position, so can Tatum. But Tobias Harris looks fantastic today for Detroit. He's priced nicely, and he's got a favorable matchup against the Lakers. He's a guy that's usually pretty consistent with his fantasy potential, and right now he looks really solid on the slate at a very good price point. Sam Hauser can also play at this position. Looking at our centers, Cornette is going to be a guy that we definitely want to utilize today. It looks like he'll probably draw another start. And if he does, look at that fantasy point production potential with his price point just being $3,900. He's going to have a lot of opportunity to have a solid game here, and I look for him to do it just fine in this matchup. I also like Carl Towns, though, at this position for the Knicks. He's priced pretty fairly. He's got the big time upside, and he's starting to get more comfortable with this new team. And I think he's going to get another double double, and that should bode well for him getting over 40 fantasy points. Then we also look at Duran for Detroit. I do like big guys against the Pistons this season, and he is going to continue to be one of those guys I like there. He has had some struggles this season, but he had some injuries. It looks like he's back full throttle, so he's in a fantastic situation. He's just underpriced right now. And then Vucevic for the Chicago Bulls. He's got a contrarian option today. He's got a high ceiling, but his if Levine were to miss, his usage would rise. But he's been somewhat inconsistent in having the big games lately in the last season or two. But he is definitely capable of a giant game here. So with that said, guys, let's look at our college basketball slate. Now this is going to be a pretty wild slate because we haven't got any games yet. So we're kind of having to trust some guts here on this one. If we look at these games, though, we do have a lot of decent ones. So, and you'd probably want to prioritize the better teams against the weak opponents on this slate, like with Duke playing one of the worst teams, Houston playing a worse team, UK playing a worse team, Kansas playing a worse team, Florida playing a pretty bad team, UNC playing a bad team, and Alabama playing a bad team. So we have quite a few games here to look at. So let's look at Texas A&M UCF first. In this game, this is going to be a game between two top 60 teams. Now Texas A&M is a top 12 team, so to keep that in mind, UCF being 57th and RPI right now. So this obviously we don't exactly know how this is going to play out, but that's kind of what we have right now. As for the players themselves, Anderson Garcia for Texas A&M is somebody I think you have to consider. He's got some decent potential today. His usage isn't super high, but his price is pretty fair for his potential on the slate. So he's definitely worth a look there as his role should improve. Looking at UCF, though, we're going to look at Curry for them. He should get a decent amount of usage today, along with the other starters. And it looks like he should have an improved role with this team. Even though he's on a new team or he's going to get, he's going to have more guys around him that are capable. He's just too cheap today to be ignored, and I think he's definitely capable. Another guy that would be interesting, and I'm not sure how his minutes are going to go, but Thiem, he could get a lot of opportunity on this team, and he definitely looks like he's cheap and definitely worth kind of a Hail Mary play, at least for some capacity. If we look at Maine and Duke, this game does feature a pretty lopsided potential game, with Duke being the number 2 team and Maine being the 222nd. They're among the worst the top 4 worst teams on this particular slate. Not too much that we like from Maine today, but looking at Duke, we do like Cooper Flagg to be absolutely phenomenal. However, he is very priced up, so keep that in mind. But he should have a lot of usage today. Malik for Duke also looks interesting. Now he is also going to be a guy that he should get into the starting lineup at some point. It's just a question if he'll start at the start of the season or not. But he definitely is priced pretty fairly for his potential on this one. And then James for Duke also looks fantastic. I think he's going to get probably coming off the bench at least to start the season, but he could roll into a good role there. And same with Brown for Duke. He has some utility. He should be starting, though, as far as I can tell, at least. And so he definitely a little bit safer than James, but I think both those guys have some potential to be decent plays on the slate. Looking at the next game, we'll look at Wright State and Kentucky. Now, this game is another lopsided approach game, but Wright State does have a couple guys that could potentially uh, put some points on the board, one being Noel for them. He does have a little bit of upside today. I think he has some potential to get in the 30 fantasy point range, and he's priced decently fair. And then Huber gets I'm not sure how to say your name, sorry about that. He's a little bit underpriced for his potential today. And so he's definitely capable. Now, I do think this game's going to be pretty high scoring, and so that's going to bode well to fantasy. And if we look at Kentucky, the problem here right now is that they just got a lot of dudes. I should note that I'm a Kentucky fan, so but we got a lot of dudes, and we're not real clear on who's going to be those pure starters and stuff like that. So, but I do think that the safest option is Lamont Butler. Butler is going to be the defensive juggernaut. He may not score a ton of real points, but he might get a lot of assists, rebounds, and steals and stuff like that, which definitely boosts his potential. His price point is a little bit higher than I hoped it would be, but he's definitely in a great spot, and he's definitely worth a look here. In the preseason, he had one game where he had 6 steals, and if he does anything close to that, then he has some potential to have a big game. Carr also has some utility here. He was pretty good at Wake Forest, and his price is probably a little bit under what I think most people think he'll do this season. Jackson Robinson came off the bench at BYU last year. He also has some utility, and he can definitely light it up from three. So he's definitely a capable option on the slate, but he probably feels a little bit boom or bust. I would say the same for Kirk Harissa if he plays. I think he likely playing. He did play in the last exhibition game, so he should have some good to go. And he can be a guy that can light it up as well, but he's definitely boom or bust. But he's dirt cheap, so he's definitely somebody to consider. Brea has probably the most look as going to be a pure 3-point shooter in the future for this team. And while he is a little bit more expensive, he's definitely capable. And then Owa was kind of the surprise of the uh, preseason where he really just dominated with lots of energy. He's definitely somebody you can consider looking at if he ends up starting at this game. But it looks like, I mean, Brea should technically start over him, but maybe he's done enough in the preseason to give himself the start to start the year. So probably a good team to avoid outside of Butler. But when it comes to just, potential, I think there's quite a few guys there that can do pretty well. Looking at the Jacksonville State Houston game, this is another game that's just a little bit lopsided, with Jacksonville State being the absolute worst team on the slate at 320 and Houston being the best team at number one. That said, we do have one guy from Jackson State that we could look at here, and that would be Ruffin. He is a young guy, so freshman. So, but it looks like he might end up getting a lot of minutes. If that's the case, then he's definitely somebody that can look at because he's dirt cheap. Same would be with Grant, as he's not a rookie, but he's definitely going to have some potential to get in some minutes here. But man, I don't expect Jackson State to do much here. As for Houston, I think there's 3 guys that we can definitely target on this team. One being Sharp for them. He's been a fantastic player in the past for fantasy, though he does tend to be inconsistent. He is capable, though, especially in a weak matchup like this, and he's priced pretty fairly. I also like Roberts, so his price is a little bit higher. I do think he's in a good spot and is definitely capable of a potential decent game here. And then Uzan for them as well. He should get a bigger role with his minutes being high, and he should have some opportunity to have a big game here. Now, I do think that the other guys on this team have some capability too, but you just don't know how the minutes are going to go if it gets into a blowout situation pretty fast. Looking at Missouri and Memphis, this game does feature a couple guys that we can consider. First for Missouri, this game, by the way, is 64 to verse 32, with Memphis being the favorable team. I do think that Missouri, though, has some utility here. Warwick is an interesting spot here. He's probably just a little bit underpriced for his potential role on this team. He had some. He played well for Wright State last season, so he's definitely worth a look here, as he should have a decent role, as his usage should be okay. Same with Grill. I think he's going to have some upside as well. His minutes should rise a little bit more, and his usage should also be there. And then Cruz is kind of a cheap Hail Mary play, or kind of a boom or bust play that in his past team he got a lot of minutes, but so I look for him to have at least some experience to potentially have a decent opportunity here. Looking at Memphis side of the ball, I do think Memphis is a team that you can definitely look at here. We got a couple guys that have a lot of usage potential with Haggerty. Probably be one of my favorite plays at this team. He's going to get all the minutes he can handle, and he has a high ceiling. Hunter also looks somewhat interesting, though his usage should be good, but he's a little bit pricey. And then Okiji, he's somebody I would also look at as kind of a very best play coming off the bench, maybe. Rogers also has some utility as well for them as a kind of cheaper play or mid range option, but he doesn't have the usage that some of the other guys probably do on the team. Looking at the next game in Howard and Kansas, this is a very interesting situation. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Kansas number 4, Howard number 224. But I do think that Howard has some guys that are a little bit underpriced, and that definitely gives him some potential. Harris will get all the usage he can handle in this one. I don't think that he's going to score enough to pay off, but he definitely is capable of it. Dockery is an interesting contrarian play. Don't think he's anybody you should roster for sure, but he's had some positive opportunities in the past, and he's priced really fairly. And then Johnson, he's kind of a cheap play to consider. Probably doesn't get a lot of usage, but he could like get enough minutes to mix it up here. Looking at Kansas though, Dickinson, if he were to start, he would definitely be a top tier play, but he is questionable. But it looks like he should be available here. I don't know if there's a need for him to play a ton of minutes, so he's probably kind of avoidable from that perspective. But I actually do like Zeke Mayo a lot in this one. I think he'll get a good complement of minutes coming off the uh, hopefully maybe starting and have a pretty good usage rate. So he could be somebody that you could utilize on the slate. Looking at Florida and South Florida. Now Florida is favored on this game, and they're number 36 to South Florida's 108. Not the most uh, you know, not the best team, obviously, in Florida, and not the worst team in South Florida. This game definitely didn't have a lot of guys that I felt like had a lot of value. But if we look at Florida, Alexis could be a cheaper, kind of sneaky play on this one, as he definitely has some potential, but his usage may not be super high. It's hard to really tell at this point. Looking at South Florida, though, we do look at Wharton being a cheap option that could get some minutes here. I'm not sure if he will, but he definitely bodes well, at least from a fantasy perspective, to be somebody that should get some minutes in this game and have some upside. But man, it's definitely a little bit risky on this one. Looking at the North Carolina Asheville versus Alabama, this game is a very lopsided one um, with Alabama being favorite number 9 and number 9 and UNC Asheville being number 141. Looking at this game, we do like one guy from UNC Asheville that has some potential, and that's Banks. Banks should get a lot of usage here, and he should be one of the better options on the team. Not to say that he will have a big game, but he's definitely capable of it here. Looking at Alabama, though, we do like Sears, Nelson, Amari, and Reed. Now, Nelson is questionable. If he was to miss, that would definitely boost the other guys. But I think Reed and Sears are going to get all the usage they can handle. And Sears is one of the better options when it comes to expensive plays on the slate. I do think Amari, though, has some utility, though he'll get more boost if Nelson is out or gets ruled out here. And then Reed has some utility as a young guy, and he should be able to get some good fantasy production at this price point at $5,300. And I think he's going to have some utility here. Looking at North Carolina and Elon, North Carolina is number 5. Elon is number 278. So keep that in mind here. Don't like too much from Elon, but I do think that Simpkins, specifically the younger Simpkins, TJ Simpkins, has some potential to get into the starting lineup or even get some minutes in this one at least. I don't know for sure if he will, but it definitely looks like he has the potential to do that. Obviously, the TK Simpson is a good player, but he's probably overpriced for this matchup, and so do keep that in mind. Look at UNC. We do like Jackson, the freshman here. He's priced decently fair, and he should be able to get some opportunity here. It seems like he may struggle, though, in the first exhibition game, so he's not must play, but he's definitely somebody you could look at. Powell's another freshman that has some utility. I think he's probably in a better situation. Both Jackson and Power better situation for most of the freshmen on the slate, but they definitely didn't do particularly great in the preseason. Now Tyson definitely looks like in a solid position here. Now his usage isn't as high for his price point; is a little bit risky, but he's definitely capable. Looking at Texas and Ohio State, this game does feature two teams that have pretty good upsides here, with that's being a 33 versus 11 matchup in Texas's favor. But if I look at Ohio State first, we do like Glover and Parrish. Now Glover is the rookie, but he's dirt cheap, and I think he's going to get enough potential here to get in some fantasy production. Obviously, a little bit risky because he's not known really yet. And then Parrish, uh, he did okay last season. I think his price point is fair enough today that he gets some potential in this one. I'd probably steer clear of the rest of the guys there. Looking at Baylor though, or sorry, at Texas though, um, we do like uh, oopsie, uh, Johnson. He's going to have a lot of potential today. He should get a pretty good usage game here, even though they jumped in a lot of guys around him. Larry is an interesting play for Texas as well. Now he was good last season for his former team, and I look for him to be another, like to be really good this year with Texas. And also Kent, he looks like an interesting play, and he's dirt cheap, and he's got more upside as well. And he played with Larry last season, so I think those two guys definitely have a lot of potential on this one. Keep in mind, Larry was the guy at Indiana State that people are trying to kind of compare him to Larry Bird. So his price point very cheap today and a positive situation for him. Looking at Baylor and Gonzaga, last but not least, this game does feature 8 versus 15. Definitely carries some interesting upside here. But if we look at Gonzaga, there's really not much here that we like other than Aia. If he starts, he's definitely going to be somebody I'm going to try to roster, as he should get a decent amount of usage in this one. But for Baylor, we have quite a few guys that look really good today. VJ Edgecombe definitely looks like a very interesting rookie on the slate, and he's definitely somebody I'm going to consider getting a lot of usage. Now, Nunn isn't going to get the usage, but he should get the minutes today. He's priced pretty fairly, has some upside. Omier, who was at Miami of Florida last year, he's going to have a lot of opportunity to come in and be a solid contributor, and he's got good good upside at least. And then Wright is going to be another rookie that you could consider here for Baylor as a kind of cheap Hail Mary play. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments, questions, feel free to leave them below.